Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook version. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and guys, it definitely matters. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's second half, shall we? In a couple of days, like I said, I will have Steph back on to share some more information he'd like to share with us. I'm looking forward to it. I know that he just probably got home. He was out. I'm not really sure what he was doing, but he said he's got some interesting stuff to share with us. He's no longer a contractor, but he does some research on his own, and a lot of people have heard the 2 uploads, today's and a couple of days that I did with Steph, and we're like, wow, you know, this guy's great. Is there any more? Where can we get more? And with the upcoming interview, I figured, hey, well, let's share the last interview I did with Steph before we get him back on in a couple of days. So here is that interview. Also, before we get into it, I will probably be putting a third upload out with some information that I have gathered in the last 24 hours about a couple of different things that really show, to me, it shows that the government is really trying its hardest to cover this up. And I had actually spoken with my dad about a couple of things, and he was like, yeah, I see your point. With the NVTV upload that I did, I'm not 100% saying that the government did that. I don't know what happened, but I know that if I was the person who had that channel, and some people were like, it was probably copyright strikes. No, that's not how it works. When you upload a video, YouTube goes through your video to make sure there is no copyright strikes in there. And then they give you alternate ways of fixing it if there is. So, nope, it wasn't that. Now, if I had that channel and it was a juggernaut of just subscribers, views, everything, they were getting these videos out to everyone, I don't know, I would not have closed my channel like that. And I don't know what happened. Maybe they accidentally deleted it and the couple of other ones that are attached to it. I don't see how that's possible, but things do happen, you know. But to me, it really has just a bad vibe around it, and I hope they're okay. And I normally don't subscribe to other channels. I'm subscribed to Dark Waters, but I subscribe to them just to give them some support if in fact it is them. So also, someone in the comment section said if the government was involved, Dark Waters would be closed down first and foremost. Well, not necessarily. James does a lot of great work, and he's very forthcoming with information, just like I am. And, you know, if I had to really look at the reason why, well, first and foremost, NVTV had probably the most subscribers on out there for channels like ours. Plus, they weren't doing information, they were just sharing videos, and a lot of them at that. So it just, I'm sure it was a Dark Waters supporter, diehard supporter. But just because he's not shut down doesn't mean that the government isn't watching these channels. I know he's very careful about what he shares. So he had warned me about sharing too much, and I don't listen. I said, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. And he said, well, that's your decision, but I warned you. And I said, thank you. I appreciate it. So with that, let's get into it. All right, everybody. Tonight I have a special guest. Steph is back with us. Steph, how are you?
I'm doing better. I'm out of the infusion sickness from the chemo and go do the blood work and imaging in 3 weeks and see if we've made a difference. So it's good not to be vomiting anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's one of the big reasons why you were kind of off your game last upload that we did together. I know you thought you were off your game, but I didn't, and a lot of people didn't as well. But what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just kind of like, chemo sucks, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
like I said, the infusion sickness is past, and haven't vomited in a couple of days, and my strength's coming back. So, like I said, we'll check in about 3 weeks and see if it made a difference, and go from there.
Right, definitely. So tonight is going to be a little different than the last couple that we did. It's going to be a little shorter, and it's something that Steph had talked to me about um, probably the second time we talked, which I found completely interesting. And it has to do with eye shine. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you um, because you know a lot more. Your theory and ideas are a lot better than anything I can come up with. So, with scientific fact behind it. So, the floor is yours, my friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah, one thing that initially fascinated me when I started looking more into what are called cryptids was the eye shine thing, because it made no sense to me, because any light generated in the eyes would be useless for helping the eye see. It would blind the retina or just overload the eye, and that doesn't seem like it would be practical. And there could be, quote, a supernatural reason for it, but during one experience on the cleanup on the edge of a strategic reserve, which has rare earths in it, I got to see really quickly part of it. And one of the individual from something that had been tagged and bagged, and one of the individuals there is somebody I'd worked with before, and pointed out that the eyes were glowing and how they were doing it. And he pulled up the eyelids, and there's a small amount of glow under the eyelids, and these are inward facing photophores, which are cells that produce light that face into the eye. And to me, I brought that up again of like, shouldn't that blind it? And he's like, well, if like the hatchet fish and the telescope fish that have glowing eyes in the pelagic zone, that inward facing photophore is how they can calibrate their chromatophores or photophores to present lighter or darker surfaces on their body to darken their top of their body, so things looking down actually can't see them in the faint downwelling light, and lightens the underbelly so that things looking up can't really see it matching against the faint light. And since some of these things use chromatophores and photophores, that would be an active calibration instrument that has been observed in nature. Another interesting thing that he brought up is that they could be for priming. Now, it's well known that these cryptids of any sort seem to have some spectacular night vision.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever use mechanical night vision or electronic night vision, whatever you want to define it as, like goggles, you can get washed out if you're on too high of a sensitivity. And so you can turn down the sensitivity, and you just do that with a variable resistor. But in the case of a inward facing photophore, if it's the middle of the night and they run across somebody and their eyes are in complete darkness mode, any light emitted by that person, or if that person's in the moonlight even, they could be washed out in a giant blur. And by putting a low level of light into the eye, you can prime the eye and increase the resolution on that person by decreasing the sensitivity inside the eye. So that will be, and it matches a lot of encounters people have had, that the eye shine does not show up till they interact with it, or if there's a light source around it, or if something's trying to disappear, sometimes they'll see the eyes before anything else. It's a fascinating aspect that is quite explainable in nature, but I just don't think it's been applied to the cryptid stuff. People say they're like searchlights beaming out, but then once again, that would be useless. It would just blind the creature. There's no point.
Right.
So,
right.
Just an interesting little side note that we were talking about there that we never got to last time.
Yeah, no, I thought about that after you and I had talked, and it makes a lot of sense that it would be blinding itself, and it is strange. And like you said, with the hatchet fish, it's almost like a camouflaging effect, but I don't know. It's a lot of there's a lot of different encounters too. I mean, I know that you've heard some encounters and stuff like that that to me doesn't fit,
oh yeah.
Which, so I mean that may be I don't know. It's kind of hard sometimes for me to put cryptids into a spiritual, because I think of them more as a physical, but that could put them into like a spiritual thing, like where they talk about these hellhounds with burning red eyes and stuff like that. But the super interesting theory, and but scientific evidence backing it too, so I don't know if you could call it a theory.
Well, I don't know if we call it scientific evidence. Technically, I'm anecdotal, and I'm sure people love to point that out. But yeah, that was kind of interesting. I mean, yeah, and we've talked about it before, I think last time, that there just seems to be so much localization and variation in the different types, but also a broad overarching manifestations of their abilities or different things like that, but also really incredibly big differences at the same time. So it just seems, but they seem localized per pocket of their existence. And so, I mean, I think some guy on your thing recently said he ran across one that had no urogenital tract, or at least no genitals that they saw when it was climbing or something. So I was like, oh, hope that's not one of the bad ones like we ran across.
Yeah, that's that one that you guys ran across up there. That thing's eyes was not glowing. That was just black eyes, right?
Oh, I thought they were black eyes. Joel said they looked like a sad drunk's, and most of its front hide and body were ripped off of it. Right. So it was kind of hard to tell by the time I got to it. But since he does the long shots, he has good eyes. I don't.
Yeah. That's crazy. So basically, there's some scientific knowledge for everyone to kind of add to your theory, and one that I never had thought of, and one that I don't think a lot of people think about is, hey, why we just think their eyes are glowing, maybe they can see us better. There was a book that I had read about Neanderthals, and it's called Them and Us. I'm not going to remember the subtitle, but something predation, and it talked about how Neanderthal, this guy who wrote the book thought that Neanderthals had like a kind of like a cat's eye, able to see
Oh, the
at
reflective and light gathering membrane. Yeah.
yeah, at night, like a nocturnal predator, which I thought was cool. But yeah, I mean, we don't really think about the why these eyes are glowing and what the effect could be. And I think that's something that we should take a look at more.
Yeah,
Um,
what's fascinating about the reflective membrane is that the more protein strands it has in front of the retina, the more reflection you'll get back. And depending on the orientation and type of protein strands in front of the retina, it will actually reflect light out of the eyes to keep it away from the retina to decrease bloom and overload. So it's interesting that those things are oriented and tuned, like in cats, they're tuned to sunlight and yellow light spectrum. Whereas if something had a interior transmitting photophore that goes right to those protein membranes, they would have to be in a certain type of orientation, which you see in other animals, but it could explain the different types and how it's able to prime the eye without blinding itself quickly, like would normally happen. That's how cats and dogs and even humans to a limited degree do that. So,
mm.
but as some people don't like the technical stuff, so I'm just not going to get too technical on it. But I just thought that was a more fascinating concept of protein stranding. I guess you could do the same with like lipids, fat chaining or a couple other items maybe, but to me that's an indicative of some biology that's similar to ours. I mean, what we ran across up north is not like other stuff I run across later on, and I'm just amazed at the amount of breakout or outbreak we've seen of all these caniforms, the dog types, bear types, and even a slight uptick in horned types, people describing ram head types. And it's just interesting to me because even if 99% of the people are lying, even 99.9, there's still actually a tiny grain of truth. But I think the encounters are much more prevalent now. And, I've never seen what people would call a Bigfoot, like a primiform or simiform, but I'm sure I've been around them. I just never seen one of that type. I mean, I've seen stuff like the pull-offs and the Dogman, but I just never seen a Bigfoot, which is kind of funny. But I guess they don't hang around the mineral deposits, that I've worked around.
Yeah,
and just different jobs in tandem. So
well,
I just find that kind of funny.
I was thinking about you actually when we're recording this at night, so when this airs it'll be in the morning, but when I was recording the last night's upload, and it was talking about the Dulce underground bases, and one of the security guards had said that the Native Americans that lived around the area, in the Four Corners area of the country, had talked about, Bigfoot-like creatures living around these caverns and caves and stuff like that. And, I know that you had been doing, your work, your contracting work, around these rare earth mines and stuff like that. And I'm wondering if the reason why you saw some of these things were because of where you were and where you were around, these caverns and stuff and big holes, I guess. And, I'm not sure how they do rare earth mining. I don't know if it's strip mining or if it's hole mining or...
Usually we find a bauxite deposit, which is aluminum ore, and most rare earths are called hitchhiker ores because they form or come up along the edge of the bauxite deposit. And so we file for aluminum, which is a lot cheaper, but we get all the rare earth out of it. And all the rare earth occurs in conjunction with uranium oxide. So that's why all rare earth is processed in China, because you send the rare earth to China, they strip off the uranium oxide and just dump it on the ground because there's no environmental regulation. And then the purified rare earth is then sent out. And the reagents, chemicals, and acid used to refine rare earth are amazingly toxic. They have names that are even hard for me to pronounce for the reagents and solvents. And a lot of people don't realize we're more dependent on rare earth than almost anything else, because everybody's cell phone, cash register, all the, medical equipment, anything that has electronics has rare earth. Even rare earth magnets for all the wind towers. And I mean, people wouldn't buy a blood diamond, but they don't realize they're holding a blood cell phone regardless of what they got. So I find it funny how people rage on the very devices built and brought to them by people they hate. So it's just a fact of life of the supply chain. And there's a couple groups and a couple bits of electronics here and there. I mean, hafnium's a funny one because that's not an ore body. It's widely distributed, but it's responsible for us being able to make very, very small electronic parts. And hafnium's a waste product from making zircon casings for fuel rods in reactors, since they're neutrino transparent and the hafnium isn't. They pull the hafnium out to make the zircon cover on the rod, and the hafnium's a waste product at that point, but also integral to every single bit of our electronics development. So without nuclear fission, demand and all the zircon casings being made, we wouldn't have much hafnium that was a byproduct, and we'd have to actually refine it itself. So, I mean, that would 10 to 100 times the cost of all electronics right there if we had to mine it specifically. So all the different little things you learn when you're out doing all this stuff, it's just either become horribly cynical, horribly bad, or just horribly ambivalent and undecided about everything. Right. Not trying to bum people out, just artifact of what we do. Sorry, just digressing.
No. Now, when I had made the comment, excuse me, my throat got a little. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but with sightings that you guys had, were they mainly around the rare earth mines or no?
I'd say probably about 3/4 of them around the rare earth mines, and we've had a couple tandem operations where we are not under direct control, but working with an operation that was dealing with the other than normal or a cryptid event. And otherwise, it was mostly just running across stuff and the job we were doing, because we do work in some of the most remote places in the world. I mean, like from the waste of the Sahara in northwest Sudan all the way down in the deeper jungles. And when you go south, and I mean, like up in Canada and up in Alaska, and there are even parts of the United States, when people don't realize the amount of rare earth that was blown out of every single supervolcano explosion from Yellowstone, and that all gradiated out into the Shirley Basin area. So we actually have a huge strategic reserve of rare earth from all those different explosions, because most rare earth comes from deep core explosions, because a lot of the interior of the earth is actually highly radioactive. That's why we have heat.
So I'm wondering if that's the reason why you guys saw a lot of these things, is because they were drawn to, like that first one that you guys, the first story that you shared with us. I mean that's I have never heard anything like that. So I'm curious if it was drawn to the area because, or if it was just there.
That was 2 or 3 miles away from where we were working on the mine itself. And that was the communications. I believe one individual, Clayton, or I think it's Clayton pick something. He was in the comments and he asked if we thought the squirt box attracted it. And that's my personal theory, but I really have no way to confirm or deny that or even know. But he did have a good point there, and I didn't bring that up. But yeah, he's quite correct, and that's an assumption we ran with, because I can't think of anything else. And I did send you the GPS coordinates and everything. Were you able to take a look at all that area and get an idea of the terrain?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see where he was situated versus where we were, and that's quite separate. Plus, that's diamonds. They come up on kimberlite shafts. So, that's different. Kimberlite is much weaker than the surrounding bedrock in Canada. So the glaciers going back and forth would scrape the kimberlite down further than it would the bedrock. And so when the glaciers retreated, those areas that were weaker of kimberlite with diamonds around the edge would get filled up. So that's why almost all the diamond mines up there are in lakes. So radioactivity up there, I mean, there's pitch blende, but I mean, that's deep core pitch blende that happens to be scraped off and exposed, but that's not very common in that area. Right. Like the Pienz Basin over in Colorado on the west side of the state, that's nothing but pitch blende and cartonite sandstone. I mean, you can get a hell of a dental x-ray a day if you get in the wrong area. Yeah. And, you know, there are areas where we can run across sub-dangerous or sub-lethal amounts of radiation, and gamma radiation is ionizing. Maybe ionization can allow these things to manifest. Maybe it attracts them. I really don't know. Yeah. But it is odd, and it does seem to be an occurrence that occurs a lot. So at least in my experience. Right. So, and other contractors I've talked to have shared similar information, and it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely. And, you know, like you said, you, not only you're not hunting these things, you're doing a job, but, you know, when you had to put any of these down, you were actually able to take a look and, you know, kind of come up with some ideas. And I'm sure, you know, you're a very intelligent person. So I'm sure, like, you had some pretty interesting conversations with your coworkers as well about these things too.
Our standard thing is if we had contact, I mean, or we suspected contact, we would get a hold of our employer, and they would actually, and usually another team of people who were much more specialized than us in dealing with these would come out, but we would work in tandem. And, you know, there's a lot of in-house talk between groups to actually make sure we're on the same page and that we can help each other out. And it's weird because we never got a lot of flack or being told to shut up, just simply due to the fact that, I mean, nobody wants to really, we're out there to make money and stuff like that. Right. Nobody's going to believe us. And, you know, so we don't really have any pressure on us not to talk about the odd stuff. We have pressure not to talk about the average comings and goings and, you know, the stuff that goes on there. I mean, the stuff I shared about the job I do is actually fine to be shared. So right. I'm not really worried about sharing anything.
That was something that someone brought up. And I forget what the person said, but he wasn't rude about it. He was actually curious about it because he had said, well, you know, what was the point of the 10 years, you know, the 10-year payment? What?
Oh, no, I made a mistake on yours because I just joking around, not kind of joking, but fronting with him. I was like, give us 10 grand for every decade we shut up. But I did say a year in the interview, but once again, on chemo, so whatever. But, you know, so, yeah, we each got 20 grand off that, and I never really thought about that. Then, you know, that expired in 2017 by whatever weird agreement that he thought we had. So, plus it's Canada, and I'm an American national. So I'm really not worried that, and this is an insult to you, you're a small channel, and more people are going to think I'm crazy than real. And so that's fine with me. And if anything did screw with me or tell me to shut up, I know where more skeletons are. And whatever, I'm not worth anything to anybody. And it's easier to make me crazy than it is to actually get rid of me. So I just don't worry. Right. There's so many cryptid channels out there. It's lost in the noise.
Yeah. That's true. So
I hope that's not insulting. That was not my intent.
No, there's not. I mean, I'm not that small actually, so it's.
Oh, I know, but I mean, it's just out there. It's noise.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you randomly were to, and I'm sure that guy said, you know, in his head, you know, who's gonna believe that these guys, you know, took out this strange creature and we came in and did this, you know, like it's easy to, you know, just say, this guy's lying, so it's, my dad actually listened to that upload. He doesn't listen to too many of my uploads, but he wanted to hear that one because I had told him, how interesting it was. My dad was curious and wanted to know what your theory or idea was of why they were just chopping that up very quickly. No kind of rhyme or reason where they were cutting and just stuffing in the kind of OSHA approved barrels or whatever they were. And
oh yeah, the hazmat barrels.
Yeah, and like they used hazmat barrels, but it was almost like they didn't care where they were cutting. They just came in and sawed it up and threw it in, and but yet used hazmat barrels. Any theory on that and why they just did that?
Well, since the body was sublimating, dissolving, or just going away, and they did put a gas in there, which looked like inert gas displacement, I've seen in labs on a much smaller scale. I assume speed was of the essence, either to preserve specimen, or they weren't wearing any respiration gear. They had contact gear on like we did, just gloves and stuff like that for handling. So once I saw they had no hazmat gear on for respiratory, I didn't worry about us. And so that's my only theory on there. It's maybe, I've also wondered why that's so hard to get any evidence of cryptids, is because conservation of matter, they can't exist here too long, or they just kind of evaporate over time at different rates.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I've heard a lot of stories of people who've had samples that have just disappeared from locked and secure containers. And,
really?
Just on radios, people are like, I had this and I can't find it anymore, or this and I don't know where it went. And I'm just like, and seeing what I've seen with that, and there does seem to be
interesting that it just was dissolving on its own, and that makes, that one right there. And then I said that to my dad. I was like, I really think that that this thing was from a different, an alternate universe, so just a whole different plane of our Earth that, just somehow it snuck in through the back door. And because maybe that's exactly why it kind of dissolved like that, was it was just with no organs or anything, and not organs to say of, but you know what I mean. So that's probably the best answer that you could give on that one, is because it wasn't from here. How many other things die on Earth that just dissolve right in front of your eyes?
Most, I do find it trending, of just my own experience, what I've seen in supposition, that there does seem to be a lot of almost oceanic evolution that I've observed that somehow was in land animals in a lot of these, because a lot of the different phenomena we talked about, from the photophores, chromatophores, and all the different aspects, seem to have almost a they do have manifestations in oceanic, which is actually really amazing, but land. So I don't know. Maybe it's something from an alternate line. I really don't know where they come from, other than that they can be here or not be here. Yeah. And that one guy you talked about recently, I think, shot one, and by morning it was gone. Then there's no noises, no nothing. So I kind of wonder if a lot of the ones they take down actually go through a similar sublimation, or that's why they're so fast to act on it. That is actually just throwing stuff in the air and seeing what sticks. But it's what I got.
No, I hear you. Well, that Randy, he thinks that because there was paw prints or some sort of claw, I got hand prints or whatever on the truck. The guy was sleeping, and he thinks that one of the possibly other dogmen took it and hit it or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
It's strange how, there's seldom any carcasses found. There are bones sometimes, but I who knows. I was just listening to interesting Joe Rogan podcast that had Kristen Beck on it, and the former Navy SEAL, and she was talking about how the Smithsonian destroyed all of these giants and the bones and stuff, and they were just talking about how every once in a while they'll find a random giant bone or Bigfoot bone, and it goes into the Smithsonian, and then Rogan goes, "Are you sure they destroyed it?" And it's like, probably not. They're probably stashing it and just keeping it from the public's eyes.
Yeah, well, could have gone into somebody's private collection for security. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that is lent, for lack of a better word, from that museum to private collections to keep it out of circulation and safe.
Right. Yeah.
So no grand conspiracy there, just scratching backs, yep. So to speak.
Very true. Private collector. Hey, I got a bunch of money and I like kind of weird shit. I want a giant.
Yeah, we have an old joke: is why are the pyramids in Egypt? And it's because they're too heavy for the British to steal.
So, I know we didn't have a lot to talk about tonight. We're kind of just you and I wanted to share the eye shine bit.
Mm-hmm.
I know
one thing we forgot in the interview was to tell the height of that creature. Yeah. It was 11 foot 9 inches. So yes, 11 foot 9 inches. So I don't know how much it weighed because I have no idea how much was there and how much wasn't.
Yeah.
So there's that bit of data for you.
Yeah, it was definitely and I'm not, my dad does not listen to a lot of my videos, but for him to sit down and listen to that one, and he actually he was listening to it on my phone, and he had it in front of him, and he's just like, he glued right in for the 80 something minutes, and he really was fascinated by the whole experience, that from start to finish. And my dad kind of looked up at me and he goes, "This guy knows what he's talking about." And so I was like, yeah, he does. And he's retired Navy, so he was it was just strange to have my dad really into that, you know what I mean? Because he was just locked and loaded on it and really fascinated by that experience. So,
well, it's cool. You never, until just this episode, you never had shared any of that with me, and I do find that it's nice to hear that somebody understands process and procedure and how it gets applied. So that's good to hear. And I have a Marine hospicing up here with me now who also has cancer, so we'll just see if she can pull through. So, good place up here to recover.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, where's the encounters? Very soon, Steph and I don't know any of Steph's encounters. I'm on the edge of my seat, just like you guys are. So I guess maybe next time we have you on, you'll share an encounter with us.
That was incredibly hard to do the first one because I was in peak chemo sickness. I'd like to get myself a little more composed and together so I can present better and not less technical, but in a more conversational format, and that should help everybody. It's like I said, I'm feeling better now. I mean, still pretty rough and weak, but not vomiting. Otherwise, doing pretty good. And I got a rosy outlook. Nobody's entitled to survive a day, but that never stopped me from trying.
Right on. Well,
so.
All right. It was, don't hang up because, I want to talk to you after. But it was awesome just chatting with you again. And, just so I think people are going to be fascinated by that, because I don't think too many people think about that end of the eye shine bit. I didn't. And
well, we'll see if it's like that other guy who took all the information from our last talk and presented it as his own in a letter to that 411 guy.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy the information's actually getting out there and people can apply it. You don't need to attach it to me. Give Jeff some credit there. I don't care about that. But, just anything people can apply for their own stuff. I mean, they don't have to dogmatically believe me or even like me, but they can take anything I've shared and apply it to their situation. It increases understanding, decreases fear, or increases survivability. It's a win for me.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you keyed on right there at the end was the survivability is, the fear and survivability is probably the key factor, especially how it just seems, and you pointed that out, it seems like all of these experiences and encounters are popping up more and more, and survivability is the most important part, I think. So
yeah, I've seen fear kill more people than bullets.
Very true.
Right on. True. Well, I'll hang on and I'll catch everyone else up later. Good to talk to y'all again. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. I am looking forward to having Steph back on. Super, super nice guy. Very detailed and very information oriented. He wants to get the information that he knows out, and he does that the best way he can, and that's by sharing every detail in his experiences, and he does it very well. And I know back a while some people didn't really, I guess there was some trolls that were, I'm not even going to call them trolls. There were some people that didn't like how Steph spoke. And they, I guess, thought he was being presumptuous or whatever. Pompous, probably the best word. And that's not the closest thing to what he is. He is a genuine person. That's how he talks. We will have a conversation and he is slapping me with words from the thesaurus every time. And I appreciate it because I learn a lot from him, And I hope you guys do too, and I hope you guys appreciate it as much as I do. And I want to thank you all for all your support, and it does mean the world to me. So stay safe. May the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life.